So it's been several months since I've done an update on the London journey, but I can happily say that it's been exactly 1 year since I got on a one-way flight to London, for better or for worse, to find out what would happen, taking a massive leap, quitting absolutely everything I know, everything that I had been so comfortable with for so many years. I was at Loyola for 6 years, but before that, I was doing the typical grind, trying to be a strength coach, trying to get that dream job. Putting in the hours, putting in the networking, talking to the people, learning the things, finding, you know, finding those positions that would hopefully lead to something better, to find that dream job. And after, oh god, how long was it, after 7 or 8 years of hard work, I finally got that dream job, working at Loyola, and I absolutely loved it. And I do miss those people very, very dearly. But um, but all of that hard work and all of the hours and everything finally caught up with me. So for those of you that know me, um, I worked a lot and I loved it, and I am good at it. Um, Not was, I am good at it because I am coaching again a little bit, um, which scares me. But more recently, I have had two friends want to talk to me about my struggles, but more specifically, they wanted to talk about their struggles, which are the exact same struggles that many strength coaches go through. Anybody in support staff, so that would include like athletic trainers as well. But they are absolutely burnt out, working 60, 70, 80-hour weeks, which seems insane. It's doable for a while. It's doable, but not sustainable. You can do it for a while, but if you continue to do it, then obviously um, your life and your well being takes a massive hit. And it's very sad for me to see, because I know some very smart individuals who are only 3 or 4 years into the game and they're already contemplating quitting and moving on and finding that life, because in coaching it is very hard to find that work life balance, and I'm not certain there is such a thing as a work life balance, um, unless you're really good at taking that time off or saying no. And unfortunately, as a strength and conditioning coach, um, you can't always do that. You can't say no. If you work for one team, you're sort of on call. If you work at a university, you work with more than one team. You work with multiple teams, and you have to work around all of their schedules. And um, that could be that you're there at work at 5:30 in the morning, coach for a few hours. Maybe you get your own workout in. Maybe you're taking naps in the staff locker room and then coaching for another 6 or 7 hours straight. And then you go home and you eat dinner, and maybe you have time to watch a show, and then you go to bed and you do that again and again and again. And that's not bullshit, because that's what I was doing. I was taking naps in the staff locker room when I could, just so I could feel rested. Um, and towards the end, like loving my job did not outweigh how tired I was. Um, no naps in the world could touch the level of tired, because it was more than just a physical tiredness, and it breaks my heart to see some of these young coaches going down that same path because nothing has changed. And I remember a couple years ago reading an article by this awesome coach named Mark Watts, and he is extremely smart, very, very skilled, and has some incredible insight into the industry. And even he was talking about how coaches, how hard it is for coaches, that there's no objective way to be able to say whether a strength coach is effective or not. And like, you can just have a think, because it's really difficult, because you can't. Sport coaches are judged based on their win-loss ratio. If you win games, you stay. If you lose too many games over a number of years, you go. That's an easier way to gauge success. But how do you gauge the success of someone whose job is to improve performance? So, like, arguably, like, okay, if that team is winning more games, then maybe the strength coach had something to do with it. Or if they're losing more games, maybe that strength coach sucks. They're not fit, they're not strong, maybe they're getting injured. But if they're getting injured and they're having a hard time coming back, maybe that's the athletic trainer. How do you judge objectively a position like a strength and conditioning coach? Because I'd honestly like to know, because it's difficult. But it's not the first case. These two guys that were asking about this, and seriously, one of them said, he told me, he was like, and sometimes I just want to quit and move back home and sell ice cream. And I can relate to that. I work at a market here in London, because it has absolutely nothing to do with strength and conditioning. That thing that nearly broke me, because I loved it so much. I needed a break, so doing anything else but. And both of these guys expressed how, like, they don't have time for themselves, let alone they don't have time to date. And that was something that they said they identified was a very important thing to them, is to be able to to go on a date. Because by the time you have the energy to, or by the time you have free time to go on a date, you don't have the energy. You are hiding behind the menu, hoping your date doesn't see you yawn, because going out to dinner at 8 p.m. is insanely late for you, because you have to get to bed by like 9 or 10, because that alarm goes off at 4:30, so you can get to work by 5:30. So it makes it very, very difficult. And then should you be successful at dating, it makes it really hard on a relationship. If you don't have enough time for yourself, how do you have enough time for anyone that you're dating? So it's something in the industry that has to change, and I don't have any good suggestions for it, because it's a challenge. Because, so for the new coaches, you have to grind. If you want that job, you have to grind. We're in an oversaturated market. The number of people who want to be strength coaches it's growing exponentially, which is great, because that means some of the need for science and better science, and that the research to back up what these coaches are saying, that's driving the education as well and the research, because if you're not up to date on your research and your knowledge and all of that, then you might not get that job, which is then leaving strength coaches to get master's degrees, which is fantastic. Like, get more education. But then, well, now in everybody in the pool has a master's degree. So now, how do you differentiate yourself? Do you go get a PhD? Do you get 6 more certifications, which all cost money, and you're a coach, you don't get paid much. You're not getting a 6-figure job as a strength coach. I mean, if you do, I need to know who you are, because I'm impressed. But the average person isn't going to make that much money. But it's an oversaturated employee pool, like the potential candidates for it. So like these very, very few number of jobs that open will have an insane amount of people apply. And so when you do get that job, now you have to do all of those things to keep that job. You have to say yes when you want to say no. I want one day to myself. I need to be able to go do laundry. I need to go buy groceries. I need to go to a movie just for some time off. You end up thinking that you should just have to set up a cot in your office at work so you're there so you can, save some time rather than having to go home and then do all of the things that you need to do. So, it's very frustrating because instead of having the ability to say no, like let's work on a better schedule, you just end up saying yes all the time, as often as possible, because you have to do the things that you feel are necessary to save your job, to stay secure in your job. And coaching can be a volatile, revolving door of a profession. With strength coaching, if you're at the college level, if you're tied to some bigger programs, if the head coach goes, sometimes you go because you are a part of that program, and so you're done. Whether you had 4 other teams as well, it doesn't matter. You were part of that program. So, sometimes your success is predicated on something that you literally have no control over. So if Coach John messes up and he gets fired, and then there you go. So now all of a sudden you're searching for a job, and it's being thrown into the deep end with a bunch of sharks. Everyone's trying to drown everyone else. And it's hard to differentiate yourself. And I count myself extremely lucky to have been where I've been and have had the experiences that I have had. And I do owe it to a longtime coach and mentor and friend. Mike, if you're watching this, I appreciate it. You're awesome. But for me, it was sheer dumb luck that I went to Chicago and I started Olympic weightlifting, and that coach, just by the fact that I wanted to start Olympic lifting, I met my coach, Mike Gatone, and then he had a business, and so I took a pay cut to go work for his business, and then I worked my way back up, and then I did a little side slant into physical therapy, and and then I just wasn't happy there. I learned a lot over the course of 5 years. If you work with injured manual laborers, I can tell you that any sports injury you see isn't going to be as extreme as some of these. It's not going to be, it's going to be ACLs and shoulder tears and twisted ankles and pulled muscles and stuff like that. It's not going to be that your athlete fell 30 feet hitting a beam on the way down and having to have 5-level fusion, a few anterior, a few posterior. It's not going to be like that, but if I can work with those kind of individuals. But then, I was finally, after 5 years of learning about some of these crazy injuries and getting manual laborers back to job duties, the opportunity to be a strength coach again uh, came up. And then I was able to, through Mike Catone again, found out about the Loyola position, and I just applied, and it just so happened that Mike knew my old boss, Dave, and it was, just very fortuitous that, in 2004, I walked into a gym and told this coach that I wanted to Olympic lift, and then in 2011, that same coach who took a chance on some crazy girl from Wyoming, some track heptathlete who said she wanted to pick up weights, and he was able to put in a good word for me to get my dream job. But it was years of barely making enough money to live in the Chicago suburbs, and it was asking my parents to pay on my student loans because, like everyone else, I have student loans. I have them again now, actually. But, and living with shitty roommates, and just so you can have a cheaper place to live, and it's paying those dues, and, shopping at discount grocery stores. I don't need to shop at Whole Foods, let's be honest. But, trying to make ends meet, and buying stuff off of Craigslist if you need it, because you have to find a way. And the guys that I see, and girls, the men and women that I see coming up in strength and conditioning are doing the exact same thing. I became a strength coach in 2004. I guess that's when I consider my career officially launched. And it's now 2018. It's 14 years into this, and I still see the same grind, and if anything, it's even worse because sports are more and more demanding, and they're more exhausting, and it's always what's the what's going to be the game changer, like what's new that you can bring to the table, what's the shiny brilliant thing that will make this a successful team or a successful individual, and it's hard because you have to do the job that's in front of you, which takes up all your time. But now what little time you might have left for yourself, you have to stay up to date on everything else that's coming out. So it's like being on a hamster wheel. You run and you run and you run and you run, and sometimes you get nowhere, and sometimes you run and you run and you run, and then you get to jump on a bigger hamster wheel and you just get to go. And for me, I was very candid with the two guys that asked me, like what they should do. They asked for my advice. They're like, what should I do? And only they could know what their breaking point is. But after more than a decade of doing it, I had to jump off. I had to jump off that wheel. I could not ride that wheel anymore. And if you've been following the London journey, which I hope you have, but who knows, it was scary to leave everything that I was comfortable with, but it was more terrifying to think that I had 20 or 30 more years of the exact same thing. And after all of that grinding, I didn't end up where I thought I would be in life. I thought, like, I had my dream job in my dream city, but I had nothing else. That's all I had. I had my dream job. That's all. And some of my London journey posts are becoming more emotional, but for me, it was more scary to stay and do that than it was to quit everything and leave behind a life that I knew. And I did what I had to do so I could take the break that I needed. And only recently have I started coming back into coaching. I'm coming back into coaching into some very unexpected ways, but I can't do what I did again, because that would be the definition of insanity. And I'm hoping that some of the coaching over here is a bit different. But I get to do I'm doing the thing that I love, and I get to do it on my terms, which is good. And I think that's what the newer generation of S&C coaches don't currently get to do. You're not going to get to do it. If you get to, as an S&C coach, if you get to do things on your own terms, then good on you, and I am impressed, because that's not the case. But I told those two guys that only they could know what the breaking point was, and if there were things in life that they felt were a priority and they were not able to achieve those things after 4 or 5 years of struggling, and if it was something that was immediately important to them, then they would have their own answers, that they didn't need to hear what I had to say. They could just listen to what I experienced and why I left, and and see if any of that resonated with their current situation, and if it did, maybe to take a long look, because it's great to be passionate about something, but if that passion kills you, then I don't know. But I encouraged them to think on what was really important to them, to give it a little bit more time, and then if they're still feeling like something's got to give, then they have their answer. And a while ago I wrote a very passionate post on Facebook about it. I might repost it because it's very pertinent to this conversation. But it's a journey. It's definitely one that I look back on, and I am very grateful for where I've been. I'm even more excited to where I'm going. I was going to use this particular London journey to make some big announcement on what's next, but I'm actually not going to say a single thing about what's next, because you know what? I don't have a clue yet. I've got a few ideas, and there are a few things that I know, but I am basically planning to continue this journey. It is not time for this journey to end, and I still need to travel and see the world and find myself in the world. A few weeks ago I was in Scotland for a week, where I was camping and canoeing through the Highlands, which was amazing because I just shut my phone off for about 5 days, and it was glorious. And the Highlands are beautiful. I recommend you go. But spending a week completely disconnected from everything was soothing to the soul, because sometimes your soul just gets tired. But a few weeks ago, actually probably a couple months ago, I was wandering through London, still contemplating what to do next after all of this, and whether I wanted to get back into coaching, and some of this stuff about coaching burnout. If anyone has an answer for this coaching burnout, I would love to know how we can make a change in the industry. I would love to hear your thoughts on that. Coaching is hard, it's brutal. If you've been in it for more than a decade, congratulations. If you've been in it for 20 years, congratulations. If you've been in the same job, the same position for more than 5 years, also impressive. If you've been in it for the long haul, kudos to you. But on my journey, I was wandering through London, and I came across a poet. And, I was curious, so I walked up and I started talking to him, and, he was just sitting behind just a bunch of envelopes with, titles written on them. And he said, I asked him, these were all yours, and he said they were. And he said they were all original, and he has handwritten some of them he's typed up. And he said, I was like, I asked him if I could hear one, and he told me to choose the one that spoke to me, and he would recite it for me. So obviously I chose Invitation to a Journey. And without even opening the envelope, he recited it for me. And it's probably no surprise that it spoke to me. And I'm not one to recite poetry, but he did in fact have it typed up. He has his signature there. So, Joseph Morinus, I appreciate it, but Invitation to a Journey. As you know, I came by discontent to the wall. A door materialized, and I went through it, into larger space where led another door. So without intention, I left my country and arrived somewhere. In the human stumbling who easily discerns call of providence, yet exhilaration of unimagined wings, sense of youth recovered, cannot entirely deceive. There is no movement of advance without loss. Wound of sacrifice, the shed skin by the road, precious with memory, laden with the ache of its abandonment, I turn and hurry on the road which is myself. So obviously this spoke to me quite a lot. I went through a door, I left my country. My sense of youth is recovered based on all of my travels and exploring and my sense of wonder. And obviously the journey has been quite tremendous, but the road I'm on is to find myself. So thank you to Joseph Marinas for your amazing poetry. Thank you for sharing it with me. And until next time, I wish everyone else a pleasant journey.